In the realm of human psychology and spirituality, few concepts have been as extensively explored and debated as the ego. This complex construct, central to our understanding of self and consciousness, has been a subject of intense scrutiny by both religious figures and psychological theorists. Among the most influential perspectives on the ego come from two seemingly disparate sources: Jesus Christ, the central figure of Christianity, and Carl Gustav Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. The concept of ego, as understood in modern psychology, refers to the conscious part of the psyche that mediates between the unconscious and the external world. It is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. However, both Jesus and Jung, in their unique ways, saw the ego as a potential barrier to spiritual growth and self-realization. Jesus, in his teachings recorded in the Gospels, often spoke of the need to transcend the self. His famous statement, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me," encapsulates a fundamental aspect of his philosophy. This self-denial is not about self-hatred or asceticism, but rather about moving beyond the limitations of the ego-driven self. In the context of Jesus' teachings, the ego can be understood as the part of oneself that is concerned with worldly desires, status, and self-importance. It is the voice that seeks validation from others, that fears loss and rejection, and that clings to a sense of separate identity. Jesus taught that this ego self must be surrendered to achieve union with God and to live in accordance with divine will. Carl Jung, working millennia later in a vastly different cultural context, arrived at similar conclusions through his psychological research and theories. Jung saw the ego as a necessary but potentially problematic aspect of the psyche. He defined it as the center of consciousness, responsible for our sense of identity and continuity. However, Jung also recognized that an overly dominant ego could lead to psychological imbalance and spiritual stagnation. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, involves a careful balancing act between the ego and the deeper layers of the psyche, particularly the unconscious. He posited that true self-realization requires the ego to recognize its limitations and to open itself to the wisdom of the unconscious, including what he termed the collective unconscious, a reservoir of shared human experiences and archetypes. Both Jesus and Jung, despite their different approaches, emphasized the importance of moving beyond the confines of the ego to achieve a more authentic and fulfilling existence. For Jesus, this meant surrendering to God's will and living a life of love and service. For Jung, it involved integrating the various aspects of the psyche, including the shadow, those parts of ourselves we tend to reject or deny. The ego's role in separating individuals from God or from their true selves is multifaceted. Firstly, the ego creates a sense of separateness. It reinforces the illusion that we are isolated entities, distinct and disconnected from the world around us and from the divine. This perception of separation is at odds with many spiritual traditions that emphasize the interconnectedness of all things and the unity of the individual with the divine. Secondly, the ego often acts as a barrier to authentic experiences and relationships. It filters our perceptions through the lens of past experiences, fears, and desires, potentially distorting our understanding of reality. This can lead to a state where one is not fully present in the moment, always caught up in thoughts about the past or future, or in judgments and comparisons. Furthermore, the ego's constant need for validation and its fear of inadequacy can drive individuals to seek fulfillment in external sources, material possessions, social status, or the approval of others. This outward focus can distract from the inner work necessary for spiritual growth and self-realization. Both Jesus and Jung emphasized the importance of inner transformation over external achievements. The ego also plays a significant role in the formation and maintenance of psychological defenses. While these defenses can protect us from immediate psychological harm, they can also prevent us from confronting and integrating the shadow aspects of our psyche. This avoidance can lead to a fragmented sense of self and hinder personal growth. In the context of religious or spiritual practice, an overactive ego can manifest as spiritual pride or self-righteousness. This is particularly ironic, as many spiritual traditions, including Christianity, emphasize humility and selflessness. The ego can co-opt spiritual experiences and beliefs, using them to bolster a sense of superiority or specialness, thereby defeating the very purpose of spiritual practice. Both Jesus and Jung proposed ways to transcend the limitations of the ego. Jesus advocated for a life of selfless love, forgiveness, and trust in God. His teachings often emphasize the importance of humility and service to others as a means of moving beyond self-centeredness. The Christian concept of dying to self can be understood as a radical reorientation away from ego-driven concerns towards a life centered on divine love. Jung's approach, while not religious in the traditional sense, also offered pathways for transcending the ego. He emphasized the importance of confronting and integrating the shadow, engaging with dreams and symbols from the unconscious, and cultivating a relationship with what he called the self, the totality of the psyche that transcends the ego. Jung saw this process of individuation as a lifelong journey of self-discovery and integration. In conclusion, the perspectives of Jesus and Jung on the ego offer profound insights into the human condition and the path to spiritual and psychological wholeness. While their approaches and terminologies differ, both point to the necessity of moving beyond the confines of the ego to achieve a more authentic, fulfilling, and spiritually connected life. This journey of transcending the ego is not about its destruction, but rather about putting it in its proper place, as a servant to the higher self or the divine, rather than the master of one's existence. The challenge, then, is to cultivate awareness of the ego's influence and to develop practices that allow for its transcendence. This might involve meditation, prayer, self-reflection, or engaging in acts of selfless service. It requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about oneself and to let go of cherished illusions. Ultimately, the journey beyond the ego is one of liberation, from fear, from the need for external validation, and from the illusion of separation from the divine and from one's true self. True.